Past players, past legends, past legends.
We're indeed privileged tonight to welcome a true legend of South Australian and Australian football in Neil Craig aboard. And if we read out all of Craig's achievements, we'd still be here next week. But he's a winner of the Callum Tompkins Medal, also Premiership player, obviously 75 and 78 at Nord, Sturt, best and fairest, runner-up, advertiser team of the year, club captain, 85 and 86. 11 games for South Australia, 84 state captain, overall 319 games, 220 goals. Fitness guru at the Crows, obviously Crows coach, involved at several clubs, and we'll carry that along the journey. But welcome aboard, Neil.
Malcolm, thanks for having me along, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Neil. Like we generally like to start with most of our guests, is we'd like to go back to sort of where it all began, whether you started playing your junior football through your school, or was it for a local club, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, it started for me, Peter, back in a country town called Maitland on York Peninsula. Our family had a farm just out of Maitland, about 14, 15 k's out of Maitland. But that was where I went to primary school. And pretty much the Maitland Football Club was my introduction to Australian footy. And it was a fantastic introduction as well. I was only having a discussion the other day with someone, and I just made mention of, when I reflect back on those early days, and I'm talking probably there as a 10, 11, 12-year-old, just the sheer joy that I remember of going to training, parents taking you to training. The session was once a week. Just couldn't wait to get there, the fun and the absolute joy that they provided. So I played with Maitland. I played for the junior Colts, which was, I think then was under 14s, would have been under 14s back in those days.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I played my first game in the junior Colts as maybe a 10 or 11-year-old. I came off the bench. I remember the coach saying to me, "I want you to go into the forward pocket." And I remember, I'm running out, and I had no idea where the forward pocket was. So I ran back and said, "Where is the forward pocket?" And but that's where it all started for me, Peter. And then as a 13-year-old, I was lucky enough. I was coming down to Adelaide anyway to go to school, as secondary schooling. Which was sort of part of what our family did after primary school. We most of my brothers and my sister came down to Adelaide, so I was no different. I was lucky enough to be sort of recruited, if you like, by the Norwood Football Club. I remember a guy called Max Goodyer came across and visited our farm and our house, and I just couldn't. I couldn't wait to get to Adelaide because it's. I just had a real passion for footy. I was coming to Adelaide anyway, and to be involved in a place called Carmel Court, where there was a whole range. I think it was that had the capacity to hold about 22 recruits. All with a want, a desire, a passion to play league football for the Norwood Football Club. So I was in my absolute element. The only problem with that, Peter, of course, as a 13-year-old, I was the youngest, and the next oldest guy was 17. So
I was going to ask you about that, Craigie.
Yeah. So there was a lot of good experiences going on, in those early days as a 13-year-old mixing with 17-year-olds. But you have different phases in your life, but that period from 17 till probably 17 or 18 years of age when I was at Carmel Court was some of the best years of my life. Absolute fun and enjoyment and stimulation, and just to be in an environment where everyone had this passion to play, in the league side in the SANFL with Norwood. And so we'd train together, we'd go out together, we'd eat together. Socialise together. It was just a fantastic environment, It sort of wouldn't be able to survive now, but it did back in those days because you could recruit from anywhere in the state. We still had
And it was probably ahead of
zones
its.
in
It was
Adelaide.
probably ahead of its time. And you think of the players who lived at Carmel Court. You know, Michael Taylor, Neil Button, John Wynn, Ian Stazanowski, Danny Jenkins, Greg Turnbull,
Yeah,
the late Jim Till, late Glenn Rosser. They're not just.
it was. It
Role
was.
models.
It's the elite. It's the elite of Australian footy. There, we're not talking just. You know,
Forgot
we're
about
not
role
talking.
models there, Malcolm.
Yes, yeah. Well, in different ways.
In different ways, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If
But
only those walls could talk at Carmel Court. Yes.
Thank God they don't talk, mate.
Yes.
But you see, in terms of the, for want of a better word, the success rate, of the guys that went through Carmel Court and the number of
Phil
guys that
Carman.
went on to play, league footy for Norwood, it was just a huge success.
Yeah.
So huge success for the club, and it just gave so many young guys an unbelievable experience as well. So it was a win-win. It was a fantastic time for me and to be at the Norwood Football Club.
And I scored for Kenzie Cricket Club as a kid, Pete. And so in summer I'm scoring in cricket, and at Parkinson Oval, the oval up the top was the hockey oval, and there was Phil Carman, Neil Craig, and the late Robert Odie training together. And it was unbelievable to watch. If Ross Dillon was playing cricket for Kenzie, there was a few more of the Nord guys came out. But it was just generally watching these two freak elite athletes who are well ahead of their time and just pushing the crap out of each other. And Robert Odie willing himself to keep going to keep up with you two lunatics. It was incredible to watch, Craigie.
Yeah.
I really mean that.
Yeah. So and sort of the environment sort of created that, Malcolm. Because Phil Carman, of course, was at Carmel Court, and his mum was there.
Yep.
She was
Anne,
Anne Carman, and Gil Butchard's mum was there as well. So they had the job of looking after us all, and what a job that was. But
Margaret Butchard, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. So, and we used to go up to Kensington Gardens, and we'd go up there and train, and at the drop of a hat, and we'd just get a group of guys, and you go up and you create your own little games or your marking contest, or it was just a classical, fantastic environment. And of course, talk about ahead of your time. Like Phil Carman was ahead of his time with the way he went about his footy, and we know, we know the career that he had. So it was, to be able to train with Phil. And be part of all that was a great experience for me.
Well, Phil held athletic records at Pembroke for over 30 years, and there's people in the athletics game industry, if you want to call it, in the know who are adamant that Phil wouldn't have only been an Olympian, that he would have medalled in the decathlon. Was how Phil was regarded athletics wise, Geez, you gave him more than competition, Craig. As I said, I was in awe watching you two do during that. Now, Craigie, so your junior career at Nord got a touch of success. So I'm trying you in winning the McCallum medal, the 17s, and then the next year the 19s McCallum medal. I think you're the only person to do that in SANFL history, but I haven't got that for sure on that. But I think you were. 73, your league debut. So you're well and truly everyone at Nord, hey, this kid's coming and this kid can play, and very switched on right from before day one. Just obviously Carmel Court playing a part in that, and then you made your league debut.
Yep.
And then go for it. And then you've ended up really extremely young as a pair of rovers. Normally it was sort of, one with an experienced other one, but it was you and Turbs together were our rovers in the 75 premiership side, and and both of you more than played your role.
Can I ask who you debuted against?
I think I debuted at Adelaide Oval against Central District. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Yep.
And the reason I say that, Pete, is because I just remember how fast the game was. That was the thing I took out of it. That's just the speed of the game. As like anything, you adjust to it. And it was like when I played my first state game, the thing that stood out to me was just the speed, that things happen. So, so that was sort of back in the early 70s. And you mentioned Greg Turnbull, who was also at Carmel Court.
Yep. I think you might have studied a bit more at Nord High than Turbs did, though, Craigie.
Yeah. But wasn't he a great player, Greg
Yes.
Turnbull?
Unbelievable.
So once again, it's just another player that came through the Carmel Court system.
And even Nord High wise, Pete, I was in first year in the Nord High side in 75 of N. Craig, Jim Derrington, David Palm, Ray Laddams, Michael Holliday. The older Hall. Bob, I'm trying to think of his first name. Not John Hall's older brother, Robert, I think. And Nord High won the state championships. I reckon it was against Henley at footy, and we all went down on the buses to Footy Park. So it's certainly that's a memory as well.
Geez, you got a good memory. You got a good memory now. A better memory than I got on that one, but. So we used to walk up to Nord High from Carmel Court.
Yeah.
Carmel Court was just down in Kenzie Garden, so there was a bunch of us that would walk up there, and once again, back in those days, you train 1, 2, 3, 4 times a day. Like you train, you'd have kick the kick before school, you'd have kick the kick at recess time, you'd have kick the kick at lunchtime, you'd have kick the kick at afternoon recess, and then you'd have another go at the end of the day. So. You were just in this environment, and all you wanted to do was play and train and become as good as you can, and it was all fun. It was just absolute fun to be part of it. So, Carmel Court Nord High days are great memories.
And as Malcolm was alluding to, that obviously you teamed up with Turbs for the 75 grand final there, and some memories.
Yeah, 75 against Glenelg, I think it was.
Yes, 9-10 to 7-10, Craigie.
Yeah.
Fred Phillips 6 points with those lovely golden boots. Yep.
Yeah. So 75 and 78 78 was a different year again. It was against Sturt, in a famous game, really.
Yep. 16-15 to 14-26. Yeah.
You're on the money. So Turbs and I, we would have been, 18 years of age, I guess, back in those days. In that first premiership, I think 18, 19 or something like that. So once again, we're lucky enough to be involved in a club that sort of, when I first started, it was rebuilding through Robert Odie and Wally Miller. That sort of just basically through all the recruiting, Carmel Court had reset the club. Then Bob Hammond came in and sort of took over, would have been the probably mid-70s.
74 was his first year.
Like
74 was Bob's first year.
And sort of, and that sort of kick-started, a very successful era for the Nord Footy Club from there onwards for a long period of time.
73, though, it's where Robert Odie's so unlucky. That game against the final against North, controversial free kick paid to Dennis Sachs, and even then the ball goes out on the full and rebounded straight off the wall back to Barry Stringer to play on. Like normally, if a ball hits a wall, it's not going to go straight back to the player standing there. It goes anywhere else.
Yep.
So the fine, as we know, it's such a fine line, and we'll get to this later on your coaching, but we pick the hell out of everything instead of. It is such a fine line in the end for the bullshit of he's hopeless, he can't coach, and he's a genius. It's Well, even as you're talking now, Malcolm, I mean my memory goes to the St Kilda Footy Club. With I think Ross Lyon at the bouncing ball like that ball just normally sits as it normally would. They win a grand final. Yeah, but it just so I mean it's. And that's why you've just got to, with all that sort of, all those sort of games, you just got to be quite unemotional towards it. And just, as you said, it's sometimes it just comes down to luck, And so, anyway, that's what it is, and that's that's high performance sport. It's any sport really, but high performance sport is what we're talking about. So, 77, Craigie, you win the best. You win the best and fairest. Most McGarry medal votes, state representative, advertiser team of the year, and also a member of almost what for me is the forgotten premiership at Nord, the Art of Cup premiership side, against East Perth, playing against McCowcheck, Melrose, Kelly, Glendenning. It was a fair opposition, and it was a great game. And I just reckon that gets glossed over a bit of what that achievement was. And I know Jonathan Francis feels Winnie feels the same on that one too. It was an achievement, probably which hurt a bit at the end of the year because, as Wally said, we lost Jim Till getting injured against the Canberra side in a night game. It probably hurt us in the end, but it wasn't it wasn't a significant achievement as well.
Yeah, so just refresh my memory there, man. Was that the Ardif Cup?
Yes, the Ardif Cup. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so it's a long time ago. But I remember those games, and I reckon it would have been in '78 when the Premiership side of the States. Like I remember us playing North Melbourne.
Yeah. Yep. That was in '78. Yep.
At the end of the year. And playing against guys like Croswell and Malcolm Blight, Barry Cable, these sort of that quality, Glendenning and those sort of quality players. So when you look back on it, like the competition, even though we've got a national competition now, like the level of play back then, you were still getting exposed to a high level of competition, not only in your state but also at the end of the year when you play against, in those Ardif Cups and the premiers from each state.
Oh, there wasn't the big gap that a lot of Victorians try to think there was as well either. But we'll keep going on that one, Craigie, because that's another subject of which I feel pretty strongly about as well.
I think we're all passionate about that one, mate.
Yes.
78, some fond memories, obviously winning the grand final there, but just talk a little bit about the '78 grand final where Sturt sort of left the door ajar and took full advantage. Yeah,
well, they did. I think I forget the number of shots they had on goal up to half time, but if you're in their camp, you'd say that that's a game that got away from them.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, but that's once again that's the way the game unfolded, and our capacity. The door was ajar, and for our capacity to keep coming and to keep competitive and keep our competitive spirit, and all of a sudden the game turned, and it was sort of particularly the last quarter. I still remember this. You could sense the swing in momentum.
Yeah.
Coming back to the Nord to us as a club, and Sturt just couldn't get the momentum back. So a big loss for the Sturt Footy Club because I don't think they hardly lost a game that year.
Yeah, they lost one game, Craigie. They were unbelievable that year, Sturt.
Yeah. So they were clearly the best team that year. Over the journey. But just couldn't quite get the job done on the day. So I mean that was a famous win for the Nord.
And you as a fellow Nord High person won't believe this, but bloody Nord High made us go on a school camp. I missed the grand final.
I've heard this story.
For a freaking school camp, Craigie. You reckon? Yeah, you reckon I've
dirty.
He's dirty, isn't he?
Yeah. I'm still more dirty on that than any other loss, So yes, yeah.
That's 46 years ago. You're 45 years ago now.
He's got an attitude problem, hasn't he? He needs some therapy.
I reckon with a few of our previous guests, we've heard this story 3 times. So maybe this is the therapy. Maybe it's a bit cathartic.
Craigie though was a Nord High. Palmy, I sort of had to tread a bit carefully there because he didn't get picked in the '78 side and he should have. So I had to tread a little bit more carefully there with Palmy than I would have. So, yes.
Yeah. They were great days. They were fantastic days. It's really good talking about them. So, bring back so many fond memories.
Okay. Now, your decision then to go to Sturt, Craigie. There's always been a big mountain made that you had big fallouts and all that. And let's just write that a bit, Craigie. Go for it.
No, what actually it's really interesting when I reflect back on it, Malcolm. Certainly, the pull for the Sturt Football Club was Jack Oldie.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it was sort of. We've obviously played against Sturt. When I was at Nord, and I don't know whether it was by fate or the capacity of me, and at the time I wasn't thinking of coaching, but just the way it fell. But I just had this want and desire to.
I reckon with you, Craigie, it was always in your back of your head. I reckon.
Well, maybe, I don't know, but it was just this desire to play under Jack Odie, because I mean Robert, his son, was my first league coach.
Yep.
When he was coaching Norwood, and so the way I think in terms of AFL football or football, Malcolm and Peter, has been strongly influenced by the Odie family.
Yep.
Anyway, so there was that. It was just that desire to play under Jack, and I wasn't disappointed. So when I got there, he was everything that I thought he would have been. It was fantastic to play under Jack, and to be exposed to his football intellect, if you like, and the way he went about it, his coaching philosophy. I didn't play there. He wasn't there a long period of time. I think it was only about 2 or 3 years that Jack was there before he finished.
Yeah.
And then John Halbert took over.
Yeah, then Jack Halbert, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But anyway, so, it satisfied that desire. And then, of course, I went to North Adelaide,
Yep.
which was sort of Mike Noonan was coaching North. And that was towards really the end of my career. And the beauty of it all, is my capacity, or for when Wally Miller asked me to come back to Norwood.
Yeah.
At the end of my playing career, and that was, in hindsight, and once again, how lucky have I been? Wally making that phone call to me and asking me whether I'd be interested in coaching the Norwood Footy Club with no coaching experience at all. I mean, it was something that brought me back to Norwood, and so when I went, what I felt from going to Norwood, to Sturt, to North, they were all great experiences, and I wouldn't change it if I had my time again, because it was good to get exposed to different.
No, we just wouldn't bloody clear your stuff here. We'd
No.
keep you at Norwood, mate.
But
You
what-
cost us
what-
the
what I
80.
did
You cost
feel-
us the 80 premiership, Craigie. It's all right.
What I did feel at the end of my playing career is like a bit of a nomad, like I didn't sort
Yeah.
of belong anywhere. And so coming back to Norwood as a senior coach, not only did it give me an opportunity to start my coaching career, but it gave me a sense of belonging again. It sort of brought me back to where it started. And that was one of the biggest gifts that the Norwood Football Club gave me.
Yeah, you've been very strong on that, Craigie, but you've made the point. Your Barmy makes the point that Norwood's his club, and you're very strong on that now, that probably come to the realisation there, and hey, looking back and all that, yep, that's my club, and that's really important to you, and I think as Norwood people we appreciate that as well.
Yeah, it is. I do feel that very strongly, Malcolm, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity, one, that Norwood gave me to play there, but probably more importantly, to coach there. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, I remember after I was appointed, it was a couple of days afterwards. For some reason, I was living over in Hawthorn, and I just jumped on my bike and just rode down to the footy club. Wally had given me a key to get in, and I just went in the change rooms. I just sat there, and I just looked at the walls. I looked at the ceiling, and I just couldn't believe that I was, I'm now sort of the senior coach of the Norwood Footy Club. So, that was a great gift that the club gave me, and I'm very, 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 very much appreciative of that opportunity.
And that's not taking anything away from Sturt and North Adelaide, of course.
No, not at all. No, and I enjoyed my time
absolutely
at those clubs, and this was sort of a bigger picture, Pete. Like, this is a bigger, a bigger sort of sense of belonging, if you like.
How did you cope then? So you also played in the most infamous SANFL Grand Final, the 1-goal North Adelaide Grand Final. And
yeah.
It was a bizarre day. We all turned up as neutrals that day. I actually was. Look, I'll be honest. I go to a grand final as a neutral. I'm ho hum. I was actually looking forward to the game. I thought this should be a bloody good game. Yep. The games between them during the year have been fantastic, and then it was just a bizarre day where North were terrible. Yeah, Port were good, but North were terrible, and it was really weird.
Yeah, it was. A bizarre day is the best way to describe it. I mean, And because in a grand final, when you sort of supposedly, let's assume that you got the two best teams for the year,
Yeah.
in the grand final, that normally that's a fairly close defensive type of, a game. I think it was nearly about the 20-minute mark of the last quarter. Like we still hadn't kicked the goal.
Yeah. Poor Craig Burton's remembered as as the guy who kicked the goal. Yeah. Craig said to me, he almost would have been better if we hadn't kicked the goal. It would be less I'm spoken about, sort of thing.
So, I mean, that in itself is a famous grand final,
Yeah.
because how bizarre it was. And so it's amazing, isn't it? So you get to experience the absolute euphoria of the Norwood Sturt grand final.
Yeah.
And then you also have the experience of playing in a grand final where at the 20-minute mark of the last quarter that the team you're playing in, you haven't kicked a goal yet. So talk about the highs and lows of sport, and that's what I mean by I have no regrets from going from one club to the other, because you get those different experiences.
As you said, the euphoric of 78, and it had been preceded by the relief of 75. The 25 years, people. I was 12 at the grand final, and I was just watching people and observing quietly and that. And there were people just crying and saying,
yeah,
I can go now, and that sort of reaction. And it was incredible relief. I will be honest. The lady standing next to the old man grabbed him and kissed him, and the siren went. And I said, geez, that's an upgrade, Dad. Yeah, Mum wasn't really happy with that line, but well. But it was, I'm sure, I've spoken to a guy, to Kingo and that, when he said it was just watching people back at the club, it was the emotion it meant so much that we'd finally won a flag, where in 78 it was the euphoria of winning by a point, of coming from nowhere and that side of things. Yeah.
So what does that tell you? What that tells you, Malcolm and Peter, is that it's the impact of sport and these and now we're talking about the SANFL clubs, but you see it all over the world. Like it's the absolute joy that sort of you start to realise, and the responsibility you have when you get involved in these clubs, particularly when you're sort of involved from the coaching perspective. And as a senior coach, you start to get faced with, and you start to understand the responsibility that you have because of the impact that it has on people. Like it dictates their lives, the emotion of a week-to-week situation. And as you said, Norwood winning the 1975, like the absolute joy and relief that brought to the supporters of the Norwood Footy Club. And I felt that when I coached Norwood, and I felt the same when I coached the Adelaide Football Club, like the sense of responsibility that you had because of the impact it can have on a town, really. So it's bigger than sport in some ways.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it.
Now, I know we jumped a little bit ahead in talking a little bit about your coaching with Nord, but was there any interest from the VFL? A lot of our past guests have talked about how they had to weigh up a few decisions to go, and some did and some didn't. But for yourself, were you keen on playing VFL or not?
I think this is, once again, I'm backing my memory.
Footscray.
Yeah. I reckon it was nearly the first draft that came in. It would have been the early 80s.
Yeah, it was certainly one of the first. Yeah,
81 or 82 or something, which was sort of for some reason that was when the sort of draft system all over Australia started. And I remember waking up one morning and picking up the Advertiser and reading that I'd been drafted to the Footscray Football Club.
Yeah.
So there was no contact. Previously, there was no previous contact or discussion or phone. You just got selected. So what happened is that once I learnt that I'd been drafted, there was some discussion, and I went over there, and actually a guy called Shane O'Sullivan was at Footscray at that time.
Yeah.
who's famous over here in terms of with the Carlton Footy Club.
Yes, that's right.
Brisbane Bears and also the Footscray. Like Shane actually gave Mike Malthouse the opportunity to coach.
Yep.
Who went on to be coach more games than anyone in the history of the game. So Shane's got a big part of history. But in the end, my decision was not to go. Why? I was at university. My wife at that time had a teaching job. I mean, financially, it wasn't a huge difference between what was being offered in the VFL then versus what you could generate here. I mean, there was a gap, but it wasn't a huge gap. And I was enjoying my footy here. And I think at that time there were state games and maybe state of origin was starting to come in. So you still got that level of competition. So I just made a decision, rightly or wrongly, not to go. And I have no regrets whatsoever, none whatsoever.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at Sportscast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.